Well, hello everyone and welcome to Momentum channel. My name is Mo, and in this video, I'm super excited to be inviting one amazing guest. His name is Darwin. He is a multimillionaire who reached financial freedom by the age of 40 and is on a mission to help others to create generational wealth. He's going to show others as well through his work how he has achieved financial freedom on a salary by investing in high quality growth stocks. We have a number of questions that I've set aside. I'm going to grill Darwin. I know Darwin from Toastmasters, and as well, we've had the chance to kind of get to know each other through work, but I'm super excited to be welcoming him to the show. Welcome, Darwin.
Hi, Mo. It's a pleasure to be on your show, and it's nice to be able to see this side of you because we see a different side of each other from how we normally interact. So this is going to be fun for sure.
Of course, yeah. The pleasure is all mine, Darwin. Why don't you first and foremost, perhaps introduce yourself to our audience, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background, and we get things started from there.
Yeah, so thank you. My name is Darwin, and I've been in IT for most of my career, just recently officially retired. And so yeah, I'm in my late 40s now, and I have kind of two areas where I spend my time. It's in the area of leadership. So I do speaking and coaching, and as well as on the finance side, I have a stock advisory service, and I do some wealth coaching as well. So basically helping people kind of follow the same footsteps that I did, which was one path to financial freedom, and starting to get introduced to the world of angel investing, which is a new world for me, but very exciting.
That's so exciting. You mentioned wealth coaching. Can you tell us a little bit more about what is that all about? What can a wealth coach actually do for someone?
So my specialty is in, as you mentioned in the intro, and thank you, is in growth stocks. And I'm a buy and hold growth stock investor. And so I advise, I have a newsletter and a service where it's all the same stocks that I own and the next series of growth stocks. So the way I built most of my wealth was through what they call the FAANG stocks. So Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, and then a couple others were Tesla and Shopify, where I was in reasonably early on them, and as well as a number of stocks, but those were the best performers. And so I'm always looking for the next FAANG. And so in my service, I'm basically recommending it's the same stocks that I own. And then wealth coaching would just be working with people in this area. So questions that they have about why I might choose a specific stock or not, and sort of the buying patterns, and helping people through those kinds of decisions, and talking to them in general terms about index funds versus growth stocks and that type of thing. Yeah,
that's awesome. Darwin, on your website multimillionaire.com, you share your perspective that financial freedom requires both a good defense in terms of saving as well as good offense, which includes investing. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, good question. And so in the world of personal finance, I think of it as offense and defense. And the defensive side would be like having a budget and saving and living a frugal lifestyle, and basically, keeping your expenses, in line with some sort of pattern and planning. And the offensive side would be about growing that. And so investing in whatever vehicle that increases the size of whatever that initial investment can become. And so, leading back to your first question, so in my wealth coaching, my preference and my specialty, which I've chosen to focus in, is more on the offensive side. So I do less work. I do some work, but I do less work on kind of getting out of debt and saving and budgeting. And I would consider my specialty for sure to be on the offensive side. So really just finding great growth companies and trying to find good buying opportunities in the marketplace.
And I think some of the analogies they use around defense and offense, I do think about the sports analogy in the sports, and I believe you have your fair share of involvement in the world of sports. Perhaps share that a little bit with us. And was there any specific reason why you started on this path to reaching financial independence?
Yeah, so I've been involved with sports for quite a few years, and I ended up being, quite a serious athlete, in my past, in the sport of dragon boat, which is like a big long canoe. And so it's like a a race basically from start to finish and who gets there fastest. So I was a national champion back in the day, have head coached a world championship team in the adaptive division. But it was sort of, yeah, like I think a lot of the disciplines that make a person successful in one domain certainly carry over into many others. So, and essentially it's your thinking and your ability to adapt and be. I think the main thing for me is to take responsibility, to take accountability. So things like a work ethic and taking the time and the responsibility for your own finances or in sport or whatever it is, and then just being disciplined in the plan, what your goals are, what are the options to get there, and then actually executing on that. It's all the same domain, same as having a successful career. It's all very similar.
Are those some of the traits that helped you in your journey and in pursuit of financial independence?
Absolutely. And I started out in both at the same time, actually, where I was in my early 20s and started paddling and training, a little bit seriously starting then. And that is when I started investing as well. And that would have been just before the year 2000 is really when I first started investing and paddling. And so those two kind of journeys moved together. And so I think when I think back at sort of the journey I've walked, it's one has, and the traits, the lessons that I've learned in one arena have certainly helped me in the other, as with many things in life.
I believe leadership, as you talked about it, is definitely one of those aspects that you're passionate about, and you've definitely applied that leadership mindset and leadership discipline to your successes, both in terms of your career, whether it's in terms of your professional career, in terms of your sports career, as well as your financial independence journey. You have a podcast as well that you share with the audience as well. Is that right, Darwin?
Yeah, that's right. And it was initially called the Evolution of Leaders, and I'm just in the process of renaming it to Darwin's Theories of Awesomeness. So my name is Darwin. I was named after Charles Darwin. And so I've heard a lot of evolution jokes, in my day. And so it's just me embracing that name. But essentially, I'm looking for the habits, traits, and behaviors of elite performers and really finding out from them what makes them elite, and then trying to take those lessons and present them back to the audience. So when I first started paddling, so I have a natural tendency, I've had it my whole life, is when I meet someone, and in particular someone who's elite, but really anyone, I'll ask a lot of questions because I'm generally interested in their life and their thinking. And when I meet someone elite, I will ask them, in particular, sort of what is the secret sauce that makes them special. And one of the times I remember that the first Olympian that I raced and trained with, I asked him to, basically I asked him a bunch of questions. I asked him to mentor me, which he was very kind with. And some of those lessons actually formed the basis for my coaching later on, but he was very helpful and instrumental. And it's those times and meeting those kinds of people that really have shaped my life. Like we talk about all the time about surrounding ourselves with the right people. And I've tried to do that. And I have a network of sort of just along, my life and career and experiences. I've gradually built a network of absolutely world-class people. And I've maintained touch with them. And it's really helped me to grow. It's made a big difference because inevitably people that are world-class are, they're different. The one trait that really separates them is their accountability for themselves. They don't complain. They don't complain about their circumstances. When things go bad, yeah, sure, you might, feel negative for a second. You might complain for a second, but then you're back on the horse and really you're trying to find a solution. And they're, universal in really having that, where they're really accountable to themselves and not controlled by the environment around them. They're basically controlling what they can control. And I find that concept very, very interesting.
Taking that ownership for their own successes, and to your point, taking the accountability for failures that come their way, rather than diverting it and blaming it on others, owning it and growing from that experience. That seems to be the case. What's the secret sauce to Darwin's success, if I dare to ask? Because Darwin, recently, I believe you've officially retired, which kudos to you and congratulations.
Thank you.
If you were to share your own secret sauce of the things that you've shared so far, what would you mention as yours?
I think there's a couple things, so I'll take this in the way of financial aspect, if that's what you're asking.
Absolutely.
So the couple things that I would start off with to say are living, according to your means and not above your means, and not trying to catch up, and to live with the Joneses, but really living on your own path. And I didn't personally have a budget. I tried and that didn't work for me. So what I did is was classically called paying yourself first. Is just a portion of your paycheck should go straight to your investment accounts, and then they just get invested. And the other two aspects I would say is I read a lot. I read a lot online material later. When I first started out, there wasn't as much material. There was no YouTube, but I read a lot of books and constantly am trying to feed my brain with good stuff and interesting material. And the last thing I would say is, okay, so let me say a caveat first. It's for the vast majority of people, something called index funds, which I know you've spoken about, but maybe not everyone's familiar with. Something like a mutual fund or an index fund is just a great way to get started. And probably for the vast majority of investors, that's the way to go. It's just put the money in and then invest it in something. And at the end of your career, when you're ready to retire, you'll be handsomely rewarded and you'll have a good retirement. For me, what made a difference is that mutual funds and index funds, which is where I started, generate an average return. And an average, according to what's called the index, classically is the 500 most popular biggest companies in the United States, the Standard and Poor 500 or the S&P 500. There are ways to exceed what the average is and what the index does. And in order to do that, aside from reading and being open to new ideas, is really looking for asymmetric bets where you minimize the risk, but you really leverage the ability to generate returns that sometimes are in far excess of what the index would give you, sometimes many, many times. And it's those types of situations that I early on didn't know how to find, but gradually taught and found ways to be able to reach, basically turbocharging and boosting how to find those. And for me, it was in growth stocks, finding excellent companies that multiplied many times beyond what the index funds were doing. And that's the service I offer, but really finding that asymmetric bet where you minimize the risk that you take in order to maximize a return. And I would say that would be the other thing that perhaps separates from a typical investor that just invests in a mutual fund or index fund versus really achieving much higher levels of gains.
Thank you so much again, Darwin, for joining us on this show. I really enjoyed your company and having a chat with you. Looking forward to hearing all your great stories and great success stories in the months to come as well.
Thank you so much. I love your channel, love you're doing with the podcast, and I think you're doing something which is amazing, which is stretching yourself too and taking risks. So I really applaud what you're doing, and I admire you very much for it.
Appreciate it, Darwin. Thank you.